Hey, and welcome to your character tutorial part 3, where we're going to be taking this layered Illustrator file into After Effects and animating it into this cute 1930s style dance move. You'll need to have all of your layers from Illustrator over here in After Effects, so if you haven't done that, go back to the previous video. You can find the link to this After Effects file with the completed animation inside and a start composition for you to work on in the link in the description. Okay, let's get started. Here's what the After Effects file looks like by default. I have two Lemon Guy compositions in here, one that is completed and one that isn't. And the one that you're going to work on today, so the one that says Lemon Guy, it should be looking pretty familiar because we set this up last time from Illustrator into After Effects. So here's where we pick up making this animation. Let's go over to the Lemon Guy completed. So if I click on the Lemon Guy completed composition, so double click to open it up here in the preview window and hit spacebar, we have got an animation that's inspired by Steamboat Willy. It's a classic 1930s cartoon, and this is little Minnie Mouse. I thought her dance move was good and complicated with the little circular motions with the hands and also bendy knees and the body rocking back and forth. We've also treated the leaf on top like an appendage. And we can do this all within vector layers inside of After Effects with a little bit of finagling. So about a second of animation that we're going to be working on for the next few minutes. I know this sounds like a lot of work for just a couple of seconds, but it's 1930s style animation, which was actually done frame by frame, so it would have taken much longer to make this clip. Let's go ahead and get started with the Lemon Guy composition. So switch over to the tab Lemon Guy, or you can also double click him here in the project panel. Let's make sure that our composition is the right size. Go to Composition, Composition Settings up here in the menu. You can see our width is about 1006. We actually need it to be 1920 by 1080. I think we did this last time. And our duration, we only want our duration to be set to about a second. All right, go ahead and click OK. We're going to have to make adjustments to that white solid layer. So I'm going to delete the original and go here to Layer, New, Solid, and put a white layer in the background here. And drag that behind everything else and go ahead and lock it so you don't accidentally move it around. So our character is not in the center of our composition. There's a quick trick on how to get everything centered without having to move every part individually. So I'm going to go to Layer, New, Null Object. And a null object sounds like something really technical, but it's actually just a place to store data. It's a place that you can parent things to, and we're going to be parenting our limbs to our body anyway, so we might as well know what parenting is now. So if I select all of the assets by clicking on the first one, holding in Shift and clicking on the last one, I'm going to go over here to the parent and link, and we're going to make this all be parented to null 2. Now when I change the position of null 2, everything's going to move. Okay, so let's center him up a little bit. There we go. I'm also going to hit S on the keyboard for scale. I'm going to make this just a little bit bigger in the window. Don't have to go crazy with it. Yeah, that appears about right. We need room for our reference too, so I'm going to scoot over into the left-hand side. Next up, we need to move our mini dance move into this composition so we can use it for a reference. So go ahead and drag and drop that from your project panel over into After Effects and scale it up. Let's make it nice and big so we can use it. And we really only need her. We don't need Mickey kind of confusing everything. So we're going to put a mask on this layer. And the way to do that is to select the clip, go and grab the rectangle tool, draw shape onto the canvas here. And that's going to make a mask around just her. Here we go. So now we're going to have to loop this composition in order to be able to copy it for our reference for the dance move. And you guys remember how to do that, I'm sure, but just in case you forgot, the way to go about that is right-clicking and go here to Time, Enable Time Remapping. Then we'll lengthen this clip a little bit, and we'll want to hold in Option and click on that Time button, and we want to do Loop Out. So start typing into the little Actions panel, Loop Out, and now If I roll it back here, we should have a composition that loops. There we go. I also want to slow the motion of it down a tiny bit so we can get rid of that jitter effect that's going on. Since we've enabled time remapping, we can actually slow this down a little bit. So I'm going to right click on this and go to time and go down here to the option time stretch. So right now the stretch factor is at 100%. Let's try 180. Go ahead and click OK. And that should slow her down a little bit. But let's test that. I'm going to have to pause to let it render. Hit spacebar and you should be able to see her dancing and looping just like that. And so now we've gotten rid of that jitter. So the sweet spot on that time stretch seems to be about at 125. And be sure also that you move that keyframe all the way to the end here of your 1 second mark. And you should get a fairly perfect loop. Let's do a little layer parenting. Right now everything is parented to null 2. So I'm going to undo that. And I need to make sure, for one, all of my center points are in a place that makes sense. And for two, everything is parented correctly before I start animating. So the body needs to be the parent element of everything, but let's move that center point of the body down first. This is the pan behind tool. And you can grab the center point. We want it to be in the middle of the waist. Imagine where the belly button might be. And that's exactly where we need the lemon to rotate around from. So his center point of gravity should be right in the belly button. Let's go ahead and parent the eyes, the pupils, the right arm, and the left arm to the body. Okay, so right there in the drop down, we just selected body. The left leg and the right leg, let's just not worry about those for now because we're going to be dealing with only the arms first. The next thing we need to talk about is shy. This is the little shy guy. He's the little Q*bert looking fellow in this set of menus, and you can turn him on to what you want to hide. Watch what happens when I turn shy on for a few things and then hit the big shy button here. So let's try hiding the pupils, the eyes, the mouth, the nose, the right leg and the left leg, and also the white solid and reference. So when I hit big shy, it hides all of those things so I can concentrate on what it is I need to be doing. This is definitely something that you're going to need when you're animating. Be sure to shy things that you're not using so you're not accidentally scooting them around. It can be very helpful in a really layered file like this. We're finally ready to start animating. If we watch our sample animation, she's rocking from side to side like this, and that's the first thing that we need to get going. If our character is essentially a head body, we could just rotate his center point and move all of the things that we need to move. Let's go ahead and make the body rock by hitting R on the keyboard with the body layer selected to bring up that rotation keyframe. He's beginning and he's facing over here to the left. Put a keyframe right here by hitting the keyframe button and shifting his body over into the left. Try to make note of what number your angle is because you're going to need that angle again for the other side. We'll try -15. Now let's move over. Right here it looks like it should be 0. And now her body is rotating over to the other side. We need this to be +15. So let's check to see how that motion is going. So this is what it looks like right now. We need to work on synchronizing it with the original, but it's a good start. We're going to need another copy of these because it goes back and forth and back and forth. So I'll grab the center point here. I'm going to copy this keyframe and paste it over here, right? So we move it back to the center. So we're to the left side and the middle and the right side and the middle. And now we need to move it back to the left side. So copy and paste. I need to space these out a little bit better so they're synchronized with our original here. And we're pretty well synchronized. This is linear motion, so we really need to work on it being smoother. And one way that we can kind of cheat at doing that is to add an ease to these. So I'm going to select them all, and I'm just going to add easy ease to these keyframes. It's going to smooth it out a significant amount. So keyframe assistant, easy ease. It will turn your keyframes from little diamonds into these little hourglass shapes and smooth out the motion significantly. Now it should look a little bit better when you hit play. I went back and refined my motion by using a few less keyframes than we had originally put in. So really you only need 3 and one for the center point to make it rock back and forth in synchronicity with Minnie here. We need to convert these two into vector shapes. I know you're like, didn't I bring in a vector into After Effects? Yes, you did, but it will treat it as images until you change it into vector shapes in After Effects. Let's go to Layer, Create Shapes from Vector Layer. So now it's created two outline layers for us, and you'll notice that it has turned off the visibility for our original layers. That's actually what we want. Let's go ahead and turn the shy on for those layers, so we're only looking at the two little star vector layers. Now when I select these, I have access to the real vector artwork. Let's only look at the right arm. So our right arm appears to be up, and the elbow is flexed, and so is the fist, and so it's high up like this. We need to change our arm shape to match that. Underneath the contents of our group, you will be able to find all of the pieces of the glove and also the arm. I'm going to grab these three pieces here, and I'm going to group them by hitting Command G, okay? And now what I can do is just to transform that entire group. We're going to move the hand first, and then we'll make the arm match the hand. So underneath Transform Group, here at the very beginning, I need to create a position and rotation keyframe. So you should be able to access this under Transform Group 5, position and rotation. Now I need to move my hand up. I'm just going to do this with my arrow keys. There we go. And now I'm going to rotate it around a little bit like this. It's going to look a little weird because it's kind of floating around. All right. So she's got her arm up and on her hip, just about. And then the arm rotates and moves up. So we're going to do that next. I'm going to move my wrist up and back, and I'm also going to rotate it around. Promise this is going to make a little bit more sense when we get the arm motion in there also. So we've got our hand on our hip here, and then we move it up and around here, just like that. And I'm going to skip forward in time. It looks like that arm has rotated down, and so is the shoulder. So we need this arm to come down, just using my arrow keys to move it. And I'm going to rotate it around like this. There we go, just like that. So we started up on our hip here, then we moved up and back. Now we've come all the way down, and now we need to return to our original position. So go ahead and copy these two keyframes and paste them here and move them all the way to the end. We've got our main keyframes done, but there's a few elements missing to this animation and a few adjustments that we need to make in the in-between transitions. So those transitions can be helped by adding another keyframe in between here, and that's actually what the term for those in-between frames are. Your principal artist in an animation studio is going to be working on the principal poses for your character, and then the people lower down on the staff level are going to be working on those in-between frames called tweens. So we need to make some adjustments to these in-between transitions to help them out a little bit, because we want our arm really to be going in a circle, and right now it's kind of making a jagged motion. So from here to here, we need to add an in-between transition. So let's watch what's happening with our main animation. Looks like it's rotating further over here to the right. So I'm going to select position and move it with my arrow keys over a little bit more. So now it's going over more, and as it's coming down, it looks like it's going out more. Instead of making such a straight line, let's round out that line. So go back and refine your motion by adding some in-between frames to help that out. I made some adjustments to my animation, and I just want to remind you that if you are feeling a little bit stumped, then make sure that you're recording things in an arc. Natural motion always happens in an arc, so I've illustrated that with this little circle here. So if I press play, you can see that my arm is moving along that little circle arc. So you can easily make yourself a reference like this by drawing a circle behind your character and then following along with the arc of that line, and that'll definitely help you smooth out your motion. So I'm going to turn off this shape layer so it's not too confusing. Let's work on getting the line of the arm synced up with this wrist. And so underneath group 4, you should have contents, but there's one key difference. We're actually going to be keyframing the path here. And this is where these little vector points that we made in Illustrator come in handy. First of all, we need it up and the elbow flexed, so I'm going to go ahead and put a keyframe here at the very beginning. And one aggravating thing about the path here in After Effects is you can only edit it if you select the path directly, not the keyframe, but the path directly. So select the path directly and you should be able to get at those points. Be sure that you also have the selection tool selected, which I know sounds redundant, but that's what it's called. I'm going to go ahead and move the elbow of this up, and we're going to try to let me zoom in a little bit. We're going to try to make sure that our wrist is always in the same place as well. You may need to change the size of your line by making some adjustments. And you want to make sure that the direction of your shoulder always makes sense as well, because it's going to make that transition based on the frame that came before it. Remember, it's making tweens automatically as your character moves. So that looks pretty good. I might make the elbow a teensy bit smaller, like our reference. There we go. So it's a little bit less Adventure Time and a little bit more 1930s animation. So let's move forward in time here. So it's already detaching itself from my hand, so let's add another keyframe by pressing the keyframe button. Remember to select the path, and now we can move our elbow and our wrist to where they should be. There we go. You can make this as hard or as soft as you like. The elbow points, I mean, it's really up to you. Move forward in time, and again, it's become detached, so we need another keyframe here. It can be a little tedious. We're just gonna move our elbow up and our wrist up like that. And it looks like it's moving back and up now. Make sure that you're selecting the path. I make the same mistakes a lot. There we go. So far so good. I'll pause the video here and complete these keyframes. You do the same. So here's our motion all completed on one side. And now we get to tackle something really fun, which is that little leaf on the top of his head. I'm only going to be showing you one side of the animation, and I expect that the method is going to be pretty much exactly the same for the other side. So I'll show you the right arm and the right leg and the little appendage up there at the top, and then we'll talk about facial expressions. We're going to press shy on the right arm and the left arm, and we're going to be looking at the body. Same thing that we did for the arms, we need to go to Layer, Create Shapes from Vector Layer. For the little leaf on the top, we'll need another copy of the body. So I'm going to select the body and hit Command D for duplicate. Now I have body outlines and body outlines 2. In the first body outlines under Contents, we want to find the leaf. So let's turn some layers on and off until we found it. A lot of these are the freckles. So it looks like group 19 is the leaf and group 18 is the stem. So let's delete everything out of that layer that isn't the leaf and the stem. Okay, there we go. And for the body outlines 2, we want to basically do the exact opposite. Go into Contents, and we want to leave everything up except for the leaf and the stem. So I'm going to select group 18 and 19, and now we have our body separated from our leaf. So now we need to only worry about the leaf, so let's turn the layers on and off to find it, and maybe rename this one Leaf. If you hold in Control, which is essentially a right click, you can rename things here in After Effects. So body outlines 2 is going to become body, and the topmost part is going to become leaf, and I'm going to stack that on top here. I can go ahead and hide the body since I'm not going to be working on that. The leaf needs to move like an appendage. You can pay attention to the way that Minnie's little flower looks when it's moving. And that's exactly the way that we're going to treat this leaf. It's going to be another appendage. So since our leaf is going to be moving in an arc motion above the head, let's make a circle reference so that process is a little bit easier. Grab your shape tool and click and hold on it and make sure that you've got the ellipse selected. You can also go to Layer, New, Shape Layer, just to make sure that you're not accidentally drawing on your vector artwork that we imported. So on your shape layer, so with it selected, let's go ahead and make a little circle. By default, that circle will have a fill, so I'm just going to go into the contents and delete that fill and change the stroke to something different. So I'm going to change it to the green leafy color. And I'm going to place it behind the body. This is just to use as a reference for the top of the leaf so we can move in a nice little smooth arc. And the last thing that we want to do is to parent this to the body. Now, when my body moves back and forth, so will my little arc. Okay? And we can always delete this and turn it off whenever we're done. So in my leaf vector, I'm going to open the contents section for group 18 and 19. And what we're going to be keyframing is essentially the path. So let's open up the keyframes for both group 18 and 19's path. And this is what we're going to keyframe. So first things first, we need to do the leaf shape. Go ahead and make a keyframe at the very beginning of your leaf shape. And we're going to move the time cursor over to where it's rocked to the side. So right here in the middle, about 20 frames. And I'm going to hit Command T for transform. And make sure that you have moved your center point down to the bottom of your leaf. And that way when you rotate it around and transform, it'll move correctly. So we want it to be up like this and probably rotate it around a little bit. And we also want to move it over. And we'll connect, so we're going to do this just like we did the fist and the arm. So we'll connect the stem a little bit later. So this is when the leaf should be flopping over. And you can see that in the middle here, it's gotten really small. So let's go back in and correct that. Command T, let's resize that leaf to where it's big again and rotate it around again. There we go. Because we don't actually want it to shrink. So we'll have to do a little bit of corrective keyframing as we're moving in our arc. Like that. So it looks like it did get a little bit smaller, so let's make it a little larger. There we go. Now we're moving up and around. It's still getting smaller. So I'm going to Command T to transform and make that larger again. There we go. And here, we need to also make it a little larger. There we go. There. And now it's going to begin to rock back where it was. So we can actually borrow these keyframes that we've already made back here. So it's going to begin to rock back, which means I'll copy this keyframe and paste it over here because it's moving backward in the arc. And now I'll copy this last keyframe and make sure that it always comes back to exactly where it was before. Reason being is that's going to make it a perfect loop. So we need some more of those transition keyframes. So let's grab this one and paste it here. There we go. And now it should look something like this. So I still need to go in and make some adjustments to my keyframes so the leaf isn't getting smaller. So I'm going to pause the video and do that. Here's my corrected animation. Still a little shaky in some parts, but I think we're ready to connect the stem with the leaf. This is just like we did for the arm. We're just going to go into the path, this stem, and we're going to connect it back up with the leaf. So move your time cursor back to 0, and this is the path that we're going to be keyframing. So I'm going to zoom in. At the very beginning, we need a keyframe. So as we move through time here, we want to make sure that our leaf and our stem are not parting ways. So the path is what we're going to be keyframing. Grab the path, and remember, you need to specifically click on the path in order to be able to access these little points. So we want to move the middle of the stem up a bit, and maybe it should be a little bit straighter at this point. So let's go ahead and straighten that out. There we go. Now we're going to skip forward in time, a little more so, and they've become disconnected again. So grab the points here. Make sure that your stem is bending over a bit. Here we go. We want it to be coming out of the bottom of the leaf. Here we go. And now let's skip ahead a little bit more so. And remember, we can still borrow keyframes from our previous position. So I'm going to copy this keyframe and paste it over here. Let's adjust it to where it is connected with the leaf a little bit more so. So grab the path. There we go. And remember, it needs to return to the very beginning position. So copy the first position, go all the way to the end here, and paste it there. So I'm going to pause the video so this can render. So this is my corrected version. I had to go in and do quite a lot of keyframing just to make sure that the stem and the leaf stay together, but it should look something like this. So go ahead and hit delete and get rid of that little circle arc that we made as a reference. Now that our arm and our leaf is going, let's talk facial features. What we're going to shy is the pupils. And make sure you're hitting shy on those. So we don't really need the body and we don't need the leaf anymore. We're only going to be concentrating on the position of these pupils. We're just going to have him look back and forth as he's dancing. So starting off here, he's going to be looking to the side. I'm going to go ahead and hit the keyframe for position, move forward in time to the 12 frame mark, and let's zoom in so we can see the face a little better. And I'm just going to use my arrow keys to make him look over to the other side. There we go. Maybe move them up a little bit. There. Now we've got him looking over to the side, and he should be looking right in the middle when he's in the middle. And remember, it needs to return to its original position. So I'm going to select the first keyframe and paste it down here at the end. I'm actually going to drag it out a little bit further as well. There we go. Now let's watch that animation to see how it looks. So much less cumbersome than the last things that we did, just 3 little keyframes and he's looking from side to side as he's dancing. So let's put an ease on these. I'm going to control click on these keyframes, go down to keyframe assistant, ease out. Again, control clicking keyframe assistant, ease in. And now that motion will be just a little bit smoother. So here's that motion all smoothed out. Much better. As my animation is happening from side to side, I actually want to bob my body up and down, and I want to bend the knees, and that's what we're going to be working on. I'm only going to be showing you the process for the right leg. So we're going to go to Layer, Create Shapes from Mask Layer, and now let's go ahead and shy the right leg. So we've got our vector shapes for the right leg, and it's behind the body. So according to our reference, we're going to bend our knees a couple of times during this process while we're moving our arms in little circles around. So the way that I'm going to simulate that is to bob the body up and down a little bit. Let's use position to do this. Remember, it needs to loop, so copy and paste the position keyframe from the beginning to the end here. And remember that we have to end up in the same position in order to complete the loop. So it looks like in our reference there's a bend right here. So I'm going to move the body down, and because of the way that everything is parented, the leaf and the arm are going to follow. And then it looks like in our reference that it moves back to a straight position right here. So I'm going to copy that first keyframe and paste it. And let's try making it bob one more time right here and back up. All right. Let's render that and see what it looks like. So we end up with something that looks like this. We definitely need to smooth it out, so let's space these keyframes a little differently. So we are going to depart a little bit from our reference, but I just want these to be a little bit more evenly spaced. There we go. That seems to make a little bit more sense. Now, every time our body goes down, we need a bend in our legs. So we're going to do that just like the arm process. Our foot is going to stay stationary, but every time the body goes down, we need our knees to bend. Let's go ahead and open up the left leg contents, and we're going to group. Let's go ahead and open up our right leg contents, and we're going to make sure that our groups make sense. So this looks like it's the leg, group number 1, and everything else looks like it's part of the foot. So I'm going to group these all together so they act like one entity by hitting Command G. And now we have the foot and the leg. And that's a lot simpler to deal with. So open up group 2, and we're going to be changing the path. Skip back to the beginning here and keyframe that path. It looks like it's a little bit disconnected with the body, so let's just make sure that the hip is ending up in a place that makes sense. So I'm going to select the hip point and move it slightly over like this. Remember that this keyframe and the last keyframe need to be the same, so we'll copy that, move it back over here, and now it will be the same. Let's take a look at where our body is bending. It looks like it's bending right here, and this is when our knees need to flex. So let's go ahead and grab our knee and move it out slightly. And we need to move our hip down so the anatomy makes a little bit more sense, just like that. And try to make sure that your hips are in relatively the same place. So if you move it back, try to keep it attached at the same place. There we go. So I can just copy and paste these now that I have these 2 keyframes done, and we're just going to make them repeat. So right here in the middle is where it needs to go back up and be straight. So I'm going to copy that keyframe and paste it right there. And we're going to have another bend happening right here. So I'm going to copy that keyframe and paste it right there. And let's render that and see what it looks like. Now we have our bendy knees all complete and our circular motion with our arm and our leaf and our eyes moving. This would be a great place to pause the video and complete the animation for the other side. Here's what our completed animation looks like. As a finishing touch, I went in and I flexed the eyebrows as well. It's completely the same process as you did for the stem and the legs and the arms. So if you would like to add that as a finishing touch, feel free to do so. I hope you learned lots about how to create a character in Illustrator, move that into After Effects, and start with your first stylistic animation. Good luck with your character projects.